talk about the PTS conditions. There's three types of PTS conditions: PTS type 1, 2, and 3. Type 1 is a potential trouble source. It is someone who is connected to a suppressive person in their current situation. It's somebody in their life right now who is actively suppressing them or stopping them from making progress or being happy in their life.
Okay,
PTS,
so for like if my mom didn't want me doing Scientology and was giving me a hard time all the time and was nagging me and criticizing Scientology, telling me how horrible it was and how I was wasting my money and wasting my life doing that sort of thing, then that she could be considered to be a kind of suppressive person for me.
that's right.
Okay.
And then PTS type 2 is when you have someone in your current environment who reminds you of a suppressive that you knew previously. And it's usually, well, the way they think about it is that it's an unknown. It's like you don't know that this person is reminding you of this past person.
Right. Sort of at a subconscious level.
Yes.
Right. So for example, if I ended up at some job where my boss had long black hair and was a woman and I don't know, liked red dresses or something, and somehow that reminded me subconsciously of my mom, who I grew up with, who's dead now, who suppressed me and who was all, beat me and was a very horrible person to me, then that would be a type 2 situation where the actual suppressive is my mom, but this boss person is reminding me or what they call in Scientology, re-stimulating the earlier suppressive because she looks and acts and, reminds me of her somehow.
Yes. And then PTS type 3 is, it's pretty much considered a parallel to a psychotic break. It's when a person feels like everyone in their environment is a suppressive person and they just curled up in a ball, terrified of the world. That's your type 3 person. Everyone around them is a suppressive person and they can't see straight past that.
Okay. That's pretty clear.
That one, just pretty straightforward. Yes.
Yeah. And this sort of thing has occurred where people have gone into a psychotic episode or psychotic break during the course of receiving Scientology.
Yes. Several times I've seen it. I mean, there's some that actually ended up on the introspection rundown, and there's others that have begged for the introspection rundown. You'll have people like staff members, and you're like, they need food and sleep more than anything else. You know what I mean? They're just deprived, and they've lost, their grip on reality, and think that I've had people beg for the rundown, trying to, thinking this is the only hope for me. And still not being able to get it because it's difficult to get. So. And
when you say these people, are you referring mainly to Sea Org members?
Yes.
Right, because the Sea Org lifestyle and schedule sort of, lots of sleepless nights or very little sleep for extended periods of time, not great food, not a great working environment, extremely stressful, very anxiety inducing. So, I also, when I was heard about people who had psychotic episodes or psychotic breaks, and that sort of thing was hushed up, not talked about. They sort of disappear for a while. You just don't know where they went. Nobody talks about it. Hey, where's Joe? Oh, well, I don't know where Joe is, And, then you find out through some sort of rumor line that, oh, yeah, Joe's, being watched. Because what happens with somebody when that, in a controlled environment of, the bubble world of Scientology and the Sea Org, what happens to somebody when they have such a break? Do they call the paddy wagon? Do they send them to a mental institution? What do they do with them?
No, Scientology is very anti-psychiatry, anti-psychology, all of it. They believe that they have the answers for everything. And if somebody's in a state like that, then the correct technology has not been applied. That's how that goes. So they'll be put into an isolation situation. They'll be put under watch, and they'll do what you could call destimulation. You're just trying to get somebody who's in a very highly stimulated situation isolate them out to get them to chill out. A lot of times they'll just try to get them food and sleep, vitamins, and just try to bring a person back to health that way. Sometimes they'll end up on this rundown. There's a lot of back and forth about whether locking people up is part of this rundown, a part of the introspection rundown. I'll just say that it happens often that they end up locked up, but it's not covered anywhere by Hubbard that says lock people up.
Oh, okay. That's an interesting point.
They are required to go into isolation, which we'll get into, but it doesn't actually say anywhere lock them up. The rundown is, he says Hubbard says that he did a bunch of research. He finished his research, quote unquote, and then now he's releasing this technical breakthrough. And from what we can tell, we looked at something online about this, and there was a man who was on the Apollo ship, which is the Sea Org ship that Hubbard was on. And there was a man, and he had what other crew members diagnosed as a nervous breakdown or a psychotic episode. In Scientology terms, he had gone PTS type 3. He had a crush on one of the ship's young women, and when he learned she was engaged, he went berserk. He got a butcher knife from the pantry and threatened to kill Hubbard and other members of the crew. There were no designated security procedures or personnel trained to handle such a case. It took 4 crewmen eventually to subdue him and wrestle him into a cabin in the how do you say that word? Forecastle?
Oh yeah, the forecast. Yeah, the forecastle. The forecastle.
Forecastle, yeah. The storage area above the bow, away from most of the crew, where he screamed continuously. So they go on here talking about how he was locked away in this room. And, this is where it started. And
could you go ahead and finish the whole thing? Because it's actually quite an interesting little story.
Oh, okay. There was a metal bed with a mattress and a metal cabinet, but he managed to, I'm leaving his name out on purpose,
yeah.
But he managed to tear them apart with his bare hands and shove the pieces through a porthole. A young Australian named Mark Winder, who eventually became the church's chief spokesperson, had just arrived aboard the Apollo and was given assignment of guarding his cabin. He sat on a trunk in the hallway listening to this man shouting, "Bring the Commodore here, I want the Commodore right now." Then he would yank on the door, which was locked, and lashed to the bulkhead with sturdy ropes. Several times, Rinder recalled, he beat up other members of the crew when he was escorted to the bathroom or given his meals. Hubbard saw his rampage as an opportunity to experiment with the problem of acute mental breakdown. Total silence was enforced on the deck so that he would have nothing to stimulate him. 3 times a day, Hubbard would write him a note asking about his well-being. We're going to talk about those notes because that's not what the notes actually say. His response might be, "You're the devil's incarnate. I'm going to enjoy plunging a knife into you." Hubbard would respond that he understood, and by the way, was there any special food that the chef could prepare for him? That is not how the notes go. But we'll talk about the notes. I think it'll end up being in the next video, though. In this way, the rage began to subside. He allowed an auditor to visit him each day. After 2 weeks, the door to his cabin was unlocked and he emerged serene and apparently cured. The introspection rundown was issued shortly thereafter. So you're saying you cure a person of a psychotic break in 2 weeks?
No, I don't think so.
I'm just going to say no to that.
Exactly.
No.
And this, but I want to stress from my own research on Hubbard's methods that was par for the course for Hubbard. He would have a case history of 1 if he bothered to do a case study at all before pushing out his methods of how to deal with or handle mental phenomena or mental illness. And so this was sourced, by the way, to Karen de la Carriere, who was on the ship at the time and is now a prominent critic of Scientology. And she tells that story. And of course, Mike Rinder has since, this was when he was, I think, something like 18 years old, his first days on board the Apollo. This is 1972, 73 time period. And of course, he has since left Scientology and is also a prominent critic of it.